Hi everyone, my name is Natasha Westover and welcome to Accounted International. Today, as always, I'm joined by AK and we're talking about accountability and staying accountable to ourselves. And how it looks in my life is when I'm matching my words and my actions together. That is like a good version of a life for me. And over my finance career, I have been striving to do this, and sometimes I even succeed. Um, but when my words and actions don't match, I feel very frustrated and I feel very uneasy. And so, this is why this topic came up, and it comes up with Andrew and I in real life time and time again. So, we thought we'd make a video about it to share our experience with you guys. So, I'll let Andrew kick off with this one.
Thanks, Natasha. Yeah, I think as we've recently discussed, doing these sessions is we both have very busy lives, and it's another commitment. And I think sometimes in life it is very difficult to get the balance between what you're committing to and what you're actually physically and mentally able to deliver. And I guess one of the things that I've observed in myself is that you then feel guilty that you're not able to deliver what you promised, and your priorities list becomes incredibly difficult to disseminate, and you don't always communicate back all the things that are on that list to be able to sort of realign your actions to your words, and this in turn has an impact on relationships with others and how you're perceived. If you don't tell people that you're having problems fitting things in, then all they see is a number of things that you've not done for them. You don't get any recognition or praise for the bulk of the work that you have done for them, or the underlying sort of outputs that you have that do largely go unrecognised. It's always, people do focus on those one or two little things that that you've not got right or not delivered on time. And I think that outward perception of incompetence and lack of commitment sometimes can really give you a sort of feeling of guilt and anxiety, and it also, you end up with a situation where if you're consistently over promising and under delivering, that you get into the habit of doing that, and that becomes a difficult habit to break, and it sets your sort of standards particularly low, and that means that you accept a level of incompetence in your life, and I don't think any of us want to do that. And I think the real challenge in life is being able to turn it around, say no, I can't do that, or reprioritize things with people, because we all have our capacity, and you have to be able to try and recognize what that is, and let people know.
Yeah, I would excuse me, I would say when I first started my finance career, and I do this to a certain degree now, but definitely in the beginning, I would say yes to a lot of things. So when you were saying, you need to identify when you need to say no, I've definitely improved at doing that, but certainly not in the early days. But also, I would say I would overcommit and say yes to lots of things with the absolute best intentions, and believing that in a week I could get all of this done. Back in the day, at the end of it, you touched on communication. I wasn't very proactive at going back to people and saying, I can't, I know I said I'd do this by Friday, I haven't done it. I kind of shied away from those sorts of communications, and I've been well rewarded again. Talked about that before. I've been well rewarded with communicating that to people and saying, okay, I haven't got this completed, giving them a new deadline, and just briefly saying this is why, especially if it's my line manager. They're always interested in why you didn't complete that. And I think that comes back to like regular check-ins. And I know you've definitely mentioned this before with you and your team, Andrew, that you communicate a lot with them, you meet with them very regularly. And it's about utilizing those meetings and saying, this is what we said I'd do, this is where I feel I am on it, and this is the places where I think I'm going to fail. And I've been working with someone recently who said to me, Westy, you absolutely need to get more comfortable with the word failing. And I was like, I'm definitely not. I like my whole, what I strive to do is succeed and achieve. And she said, yeah. So that's why when you fail just a little bit, you really beat yourself up about it. So rather than, I'm still not comfortable with failing, but I'm more comfortable with recognizing I'm about to fail. How do I communicate that? How do I put things around it that helps me feel a bit better about it? I kind of ignored that quite a lot when I was younger, and I'm working really hard on it, especially this year. It's been quite something I've been working on. And you were talking about your priorities and things like that. When it gets overwhelming and when I feel, I'm not doing what I said I'd do, my words and actions are once again misaligned. I find I have not just one list of things to do, I have lists all over the place. That's a trigger to say you are going to fail at this. You're not going to stay anywhere near accountable to what you said you were going to achieve. I found that this morning when we came to do these videos. I had Andrew's laughing at me. I had like 3 different lists and 3 different notebooks. That's a sign. That is an absolute trigger. So it's about me having check-ins with myself. And this morning I could have just said, okay, I'm just a bit unprepared. But instead I'm thinking, something's happened. And this thing that you value of staying accountable to yourself, matching your words and your actions, this is a trigger of why it's not going to happen. So I need to have a check-in about how I get better at that. What we do at one of the places where I work is we have what we absolutely need to get done, what we think we can achieve, but also we have like stretch goals. And I think that's really one of the important things you can do with your line manager and do with your team, your project team, whoever you're working on, is these things are fluid. They constantly move around. So whereas one week it's this, this, and this, maybe something comes up, there's a problem with payroll, you've had to drop everything, spend a few hours on that. So what falls into those categories will change. That is a really good way to help me stay accountable to my words and my commitments, is keeping that list fluid and communicating off the back of it, and really being clear, especially to my bosses and people around me, of what has now become a stretch goal. It's in an ideal world we'll get here. I don't know if you use any of those tools or systems in your work, Andrew.
Yeah, I think it comes back to that regular check-ins with people, and having those sort of as a manager, being able to communicate to your reports or upwards to your managers that actually this is on my list, this is on your list. These things are, like you say, your list and somebody else's list have to be interchangeable. Otherwise, you will get into a position where you're perpetually sort of failing to achieve what you're being asked to do. So I think, yeah, absolutely, you need those regular check-ins, and means of communication. Another thing I would say is sort of going back to the sort of guilt side of things is, you were saying earlier about, or we were saying about, people focusing on the few things that you've done badly. I think from a sort of self perspective, it's also worth bearing in mind the whole Pareto thing, 80-20 rule. Actually, 80, 90, 95% of the time, you are delivering exactly what you're expected to deliver. It's just that little bit at the end. Now, from a sort of a confidence and self-belief perspective, it's worth just holding that in your head. I've delivered 95% of what was on my list. It's just that last 5%, and the important thing then is being able to communicate to the recipients of that what you can't deliver and why you can't deliver it. So I think those are the sort of additional bits I'd add in.
And maybe in that last 5%, asking for support, asking for help, asking for support, asking people's advice of like, here's how I've ended up here. What would you suggest I do?
Yeah.
I think we can get lost in our own worlds, in our own lists, in that feeling of, I said I'd do it, I didn't do it, I failed, oh no, and that downward spiral of just talking to yourself like you're not very good. And you yourself, because today we're talking like accountability to yourself, you yourself can forget about the 80% you did really well. And you do, by and large, in business, talk about the 20% or the 5%, whatever it is that you didn't achieve, because everything else ticked off the list and you move on. So it's up to you to really talk it up to yourself and go, okay, I didn't do it, how can I do it better? And a friend, a colleague of mine said to me this year, you get what you tolerate. And I know you touched on that as well. But when she said it to me, oh my goodness, it's like she slapped me around the face, because we were talking about like with other people, but actually with yourself, you get what you tolerate. So your output, my work that represents me, could it be better? Yes. Why is it not better? Because I've tolerated it being down here sometimes. And it was a real, like, she'd held the mirror up to me and it felt really uncomfortable. But I also thanked her for it. It was like, yeah, you get what you tolerate. So make a decision, Natasha, about what you're going to tolerate, and then figure out the processes and systems behind it. Communication, figure out that self-talk. We talked about guilt. That's self-talk, isn't it? That's that internal monkey going, oh, you're not very good at this. And figure out what you want that perception of yourself and your work to be to others. When I concentrate on that, life aligns a bit more in my favor. But yeah, I think when you get what you tolerate, that is something to sit with and think about. What are you tolerating for yourself and for others around you? And what would you like the standard to be? Do you have any final thoughts, Andrew?
No, I think you've covered it well there.
Okay. Thanks for your time, guys, and we'll see you in the next video.